My name is Shawn, and I'm with Pinnacle Health Informatics. And we're going to talk today about bullet graphs. We're going to talk about bullet graphs or bullet charts in Power BI and talk a little bit about them and some of the limitations. And we're going to look at a few and we'll actually build one. So I think they're one of the most effective means of communicating data on a dashboard. I really, really like bullet graphs and bullet charts. Same thing. It's an interchangeable term. If anyone has a question while we're going through here, just please ask it and we'll get it answered for you, or we'll have a few minutes at the end as well. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started here. So just a real quick overview of Pinnacle and who we are if you don't know. We focus on behavioral health and mental health. We've been in it over 20 years now in data warehousing and analytics and integrating with most behavioral health software platforms. You can learn more about us at phidw.com. We're also on LinkedIn and YouTube, and we'll be sending some links out today with some of those links on how to find us on the web and in social media. So we really are passionate about this data. We really enjoy it, and we like working in the data. And today we're going to look at one aspect that's one of our favorites. So just really quickly, graphs and gauges are great. We're going to show a picture here of some graphs and gauges on dashboards. Most of the time they're intended to display a key measure, right? And a common one that we deal with is, provider time. How much time has a provider spent? But it could really be anything. It could be no-show rates. It could be recidivism. It could be number of services or whatever. It's just a key measure that you want to track. And then we want to compare that to some related measures. So do we want to compare that to, something from last year? Do we want to compare it to a standard? Do we want to compare it to a goal? Some related measure. We want to compare it to qualitative and quantitative ranges. We may want to say, this is good, this is bad. This needs improvement. This is not satisfactory. And give people a very quick and easy to understand cognitively bit of information. I think that these charts and graphs can really enrich the data, and they're very useful. So one issue about standard gauges, and you've all seen these kind of gauges. These are all ones you've probably seen or used. I've used them and seen them. And they're nice, and they kind of look like a dashboard, and they look like your car or a traffic light or something. And you can see these are examples of things that are comparing, values. This bottom left one, these colors would correspond to something, and where the needle on the dashboard is would communicate to the end user. You have fancy ones that actually look like car dashboards and things like that. Now, one problem is they're kind of big, and I don't think they lend themselves great to dashboards, right? I think that you can't put as many on. It's hard to compare two things. They're not really linear. If you want to compare a bunch of providers, for example, it's difficult. So I think there's some limitations to these kind of gauges, and that's where the bullet gauge or the bullet chart comes into play. They're more suited. They're easy to understand. And I'm going to show you a couple here, and you'll get my intention here. It's very fast to understand a bullet graph and cognitively process that. We can compare many different performance measures. They're very understandable. And in some software, you can do dynamic colors and indications, so you can change the colors. So we're going to take a look here. That's a couple of examples. So this is just a really, really simple bullet graph. This is just an excerpt from a dashboard where we're looking at provider hours versus paid hours, right? So we pull in the amount of paid hours from time clock, for example, and then we compare it to the amount of time that they've spent in billable services. So you can see over here that this is kind of a crosstab to the left here of that red box. And that looks fine, that looks great. But our brains, it's hard for us to kind of understand the difference between those numbers, right? I mean, unless we can see it graphically. So there in the red box, we give a very simple bullet graph of the provider hours, which is the light gray, against the paid hours. So when we express a bullet graph like that, you can really see, wow, that that provider was providing, you know, maybe a third of the hours they were getting paid for, right? So that's kind of the look. So the black line is the provider hours, the black crossing line, and the gray is the actually it's the opposite of that. The provider hours is the black crossing line, and the gray is the paid hours. So you can see quickly the comparison there, and you can see how easy it is to compare those values and understand that there's a discrepancy there. This is a very simple one. I want to show a more advanced one here. So, and this is one that we've done on a productivity chart. This is not done in Power BI. This was done in SQL reporting services. And quite frankly, the Power BI isn't quite the bullet graph or the bullet chart capabilities of Power BI aren't quite yet to where the SQL reporting service bullet graph capabilities are. But we can see here, so the idea of this chart is to encode or show provider time against some goals and against production. So we can see from the red arrow, that's the performance measure we want to look at. So that's how many hours the provider has provided in clinical service that's billable. And so we can kind of see that's red. You know, it corresponds to this box here. It's 35.5 hours year to date. We have a bar. We want to compare that now. We want to compare things. We have a bar showing a comparative measure, and that's the time available. So the gray represents time at work. Okay, so time they're punched in at work on the time clock. Now we also want to compare this to a goal. So we've created a cross of a vertical gold bar. That's the goal, and their goal is to be 65% productive. And so if they were meeting productivity at this point in the year, then the red bar would be hitting the gold bar. But you see there's a big discrepancy between what they've produced and the amount of time they've been available. And we can easily compare these two providers. Now this upper one is a supervisor, so they're maybe not doing as much direct time, but you can see on the second two, you can see that comparison quite easily, much better than with a gauge, a round gauge or something like that. So we can see that the provider here is providing more direct service based on the amount of time they've been at work. But neither of them are approaching the goal, and that's very easy to see. The other item here is this blue section. That's comparison to a standard. That's the amount of hours that have in the year. Okay, and so we can see that they've taken a little bit of time off. There's a little bit of difference between the gray and the blue. You know, we're moving up to 2,200 hours or so as the year progresses. But it's very easy to see. Okay, they've produced the red. They were at work with the gray, and this is how many hours are in the year. Whoops, let me go back one. And so you can see very quickly with a bullet graph the comparison between a performance measure and related measures. And so this particular bullet graph has been extremely successful at the agency that it operates in, or that it's been deployed in, and it's been a big help. We've seen 50+% increases in productivity. And this is a dashboard that gets run. It's a 500 user agency, and it gets run every day, thousands of times. By the providers, and it runs dynamically and all that good stuff. You know, they only see their data, but very easy and very quick. And I hope everybody that's listening and watching can kind of see that these bullet graphs are very, very powerful, because it just takes a minute to see and understand the data. Let's see. Okay, so in Power BI, they have a custom visual. There's really nothing built into Power BI. You have to get a custom visual and download it. It is from Microsoft, and it is you can add it easily, and we're going to show you how you can add that. And it's their bullet chart. you can see it kind of looks like what we've been looking at, and some of you maybe have worked with it. They have several different parameters within the Power BI custom visual, the bullet graph, for you to drop your data into. So they have a category, as you can see. Oops. They have a category which would be provider or computer hardware type or city or program or cost center, whatever. They have the value that you're trying to track, which might be provider time or number of services. There's a target value. It allows you to set a target value. You can see that as the vertical bar over here in this image. You have a minimum. You have a needs improvement. So minimum, you could color that the red. The needs improvement could be the yellow. Satisfactory could be light green. Good could be a little darker green. Very good could be dark green. And then maximum could be the whole range, right? And then you can have a second target value if you want to. You can have like, the average of the whole agency if you wanted to have that. So these are all the things that you can look at in the Power BI environment. So we're going to go ahead and look at that now. If anyone has any questions, please ask away. Let's see. Okay. Let me reshare my screen here. Okay. You should be seeing an instance of Power BI Desktop. If you don't see that, somebody raise their hand or let me know that you're not seeing that.
Yes, it's there.
Okay. Very good. Very good. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and get some data here. Actually, let's go ahead and add the custom visual first. So we're going to go ahead and go to the ellipsis here in our visualization well. I'm going to say get more visuals. And it's going to go out to the Microsoft cloud. And you can see there's a whole bunch of visuals here you can download. There's a whole bunch. There's just many that you can download. And you've probably, if you're working in Power BI, you've probably tried some of these. I'm going to go ahead and add that custom visual. Okay, and it's been imported. Great. You can see that listed here, bullet chart 2. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and click on that. There's our visual. Okay. So you can see here in our visualization in our table and data section, you have all those fields we just mentioned: category value, target value, minimum, needs improvement, satisfactory, good, very good, maximum, and target value 2. Well, let's get some data. So we're going to go out and we're going to get some data. And I've got a couple of little data sets here. I've got a hardware computer cells that we're going to look at just as a quick example here. And this is Excel. Now, we don't use Excel a lot in what we do because we have data warehouses with the OLAP layer, the multidimensional layer, and the tabular data layer. So this would all be in a live kind of OLAP environment, but it's nice to experiment with Excel. It's very easy to use. It's very well suited to Power BI. So in this first step, we can kind of look at our data. We have our product type. We have our actual sales. We have the target that we want to be we want to meet in our sales performance. We have our ranges, right? So these are going to be our ranges, and it's going to change color based on these values. This is, poor performance would be 40 units, satisfactory is 65 units, and excellent is 75 units. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and load that up. Power BI is going to go out and get it. And I can send these Excel data sets out to you if you're interested. They're just little, but they're easy to send out. Okay, so we've got our chart here. Now we're just going to drag into these fields, into these parameter fields, the different values. So our product is our category. We drag that in. Okay. And then our value is our actual sales. Drag that in. Oh, look, we're already starting to see our graph appear. Our target value is target. Very simple. Let's see, we don't have a minimum. We have a needs improvement. We're calling that poor. Oh, look at that. We're starting to see colors come in, and there's some intelligence to this that makes it a little bit easier. Satisfactory, well, we have a column called satisfactory, so we're just going to drop that in. Oh, look at that. Okay, we're extending our bullet graph out. Good. We can go into the excellent field. Excellent can go into the good field. Can do that one. And that kind of gets us a simple bullet chart or bullet graph. And you can kind of see how those come together. Now we could have done like a very good. I guess we could move the excellent to very good. Let's try that. What does that do for us? Doesn't really do anything for us. We could have come up with like an excellent and a good range. As you can see, target actual 45. And because of the way it does this, and the way this chart is built, you know, it doesn't kind of, these aren't the same range, right? You don't have the same range on each one, but you do get to kind of see if you are getting into the very good range. So you can see here, you know, the different types of computers or the different types of hardware, how they're performing, right? And we have our vertical bar, that's our goal, okay? And that's a very simple bullet chart, okay? So if we're selected there and we go to our paintbrush here, then we can look at some of the additional options. We can change tooltips, and we can, you know, change the target value name and the custom name. So we could say, let's see, we wanted to call that sales. I don't know, would that work better? Let's see. Yeah, sales. So you can see you can change those things there. So you can get kind of fancy with it. Let's see, we can come back in here to the paintbrush and we can look at our units here. Let's see if we want to, I think it's on the axis, measure units, our dollars. We click on that and then it appears over here. You know, we can add some additional information for the user. We can also change the colors, right? So we can come in here. Should we have that selected? And we can switch to our formatter and we can change the colors, right? So if we want to use different colors, if we want the bullet to be a different color, we can change it to blue. And that changes the color. So there's a few things we can do to enhance that. Now, that's a very effective bullet graph, right? I mean, you can see very clearly what products are performing and meeting their goals, right? Very, very useful. Now, and it was very fast, and we can compare those. You could do this across anything. Are there any questions or anything before we move on? Anybody have any thoughts? Okay, excellent. So one, in behavioral health, it's nice to look at things a little bit, well, and in some cases in behavioral health, I want to sort of try to replicate the hours worked chart and the productivity chart that I showed you earlier that I'd done in SQL reporting services. So let's do this. Let's get a new page here. Let us do this. Let's see, get data from Excel. And I have a work time table. We'll show you what this looks like. We may have to do a new instance here, but we'll try it here. Okay, so this is a little different. We're not really using the ranges like we did before. We actually want to use the ranges to reflect like time at work, paid time, the target productivity, stuff like that. So and the number of hours in a year. So we're gonna do this a little bit differently than kind of the author of the bullet graph intended. So we're gonna go ahead and load this data. You can see the actuals. This would be the amount of time each provider has spent. This is the target. This might come from an HR system or some other file where you've set a goal for an end user. Present is how much time they've actually been at work, punched into the system, and we'd get that time from a time clock, and then the number of hours in the year would be this value here. So we're going to go ahead and load that. Let's see if it okay, here we go. It's going to be these values. So we're going to drop our bullet chart in here. There we go. It wasn't very, and we'll expand this out. Now our category is going to be provider, right? So we're going to grab provider here. And then actual is going to be the amount of hours they spent this year. And we see those are all different. Our target value is the value from, say, the HR system that they need to be working. So already we're starting to see, oh, wow, that's them against their target, right? You can already see very clearly that there's several providers not meeting the target because it's that vertical bar. Now, what we're going to do different here is we're going to do the maximum as the hours in the year. Okay, so that's our 2,200 hours. Now we can begin to see. So if we're 80% through the fiscal year, wow, they got a long way to go, or they got a long way to go. And if they're not meeting their productivity, they may not make it, right? So that's our maximum. And then we would say, okay, let's say we also want to see how much they're present. So we could probably drop that into the good or the satisfactory. Let's try it in the good. Okay. So that kind of starts to show us a little bit. It's not really designed to do this, which is one of the limitations of Power BI. Let's see if we put it in the satisfactory. Let's see how that works. Or that needs improvement. Let's see. Yeah, maybe satisfactory. Let's put it there. So now we can kind of see, we can play with the colors. Now we can, it's very similar to what we had before. We can say, oh, okay, the black is how much they've produced. The red is how much time they've been at work. The yellow represents the whole year. So, the 2,200 hours. And then our target is the expectation. And we can kind of see how they're performing against that. Now let's go ahead and change the colors a little bit. Let's go change the colors. Now, it kind of doesn't work because we're not doing it exactly the way they intended it to be used. The colors, it doesn't jive exactly. So we're going to kind of see what we can do here. Okay, that looks a little better. That looks a little better. And then let's make the satisfactory kind of a light gray. There we go. That looks a little better. That's a little cleaner. And then we could put in, you could put in some labels and change this. So it doesn't give you a tooltip, I don't think, for the ranges, but it does give you a tooltip for the actual and target. So you can see we've sort of by sort of manipulating this, we can make it appear different than it was intended. So these aren't ranges like good, bad. It's more like, oh, this is how many hours were in the year. This is how many hours you were present at work. And this was the goal you had. Now, one thing it doesn't do, I can't change the colors. So in our other bullet chart that I was showing you, the colors would change. Here's that again. These colors will change on these bars if you hit the goal. So this, I don't have a picture of that, but this red bar changes to green. And there's really no, it's really not smart enough yet in Power BI to do that. But you still get the idea. You can see if if somebody's meeting productivity or if they're not, and how close they are to meeting it, and if they're going to be successful. The other tool in the Microsoft bag of tools is the SQL reporting services. Excuse me, SQL reporting services. Let's see if I can pull up. I was just going to show this here. So this is the other tool, and most of you probably have this and are working with it. And it's a great tool, and Microsoft updates that people think, oh, they're getting rid of this, but they're not getting rid of this because it's very, very powerful, and it has a lot of capabilities. And this is the bullet graph gauge in Report Builder. Let's see if I can show that. So they have a bunch of thermometer type gauges, and they have the bullet graph or the bullet chart. They in the ability to select it, and it has a lot more. You can do a lot more with it. You can do. It's just I'm just going to illustrate all the different things. You can have many different ranges, and things can change color, and you can use Visual Basic script against it. So in some ways, the Visual Studio / Report Builder tool is more advanced than the Power BI, because you can do some of this kind of stuff that you can't quite yet do in Power BI, which is kind of interesting. But with that, you can kind of see that the bullet graph is extremely powerful, right? And I can compare things, and I can communicate data very quickly and effectively. And so I end up using these all the time, and people really like them. It's just, they don't have to kind of spend time looking, okay, what am I looking at here? It's like you're meeting productivity, you're meeting the goal, or you're not. And it's very clear what's occurring there. So very, very effective. Does anybody want to see anything that I did again? Anybody want me to go back over anything on that? Okay. Let me go ahead and stop sharing then. I'll share another, back to my presentation here. So that was kind of the overview of the bullet graph in Power BI. Again, it's not super configurable yet, but it does a lot. And you can, by playing around with it and changing and modifying items, you can make it much more effective and probably make it meet your particular analytic need. And it's great in communicating a lot of data on a dashboard and for comparing different measures of performance across categories. So provider, department, cost center, etc. Let's see, with that, I just wanted to invite anyone that with any questions, you're free to email us or ask us. I'm happy to just answer questions. If you're a customer or not, it doesn't matter to me. I love doing this stuff. We are on LinkedIn and YouTube. We'd be happy to assist in any way we can. Like I said, just from a simple question to whatever assistance you might need. Are there any questions that we can answer for anybody, or anything I can go back over before we wrap up? Well, very good. I appreciate everyone joining us today. I hope this was useful. We'll record this and we'll send out a link. I'll send out a copy of those. I'll even send those spreadsheets out that I did, or the spreadsheets and the Power BI file. I'll send those out with a notification of the recording. So we're pleased that everyone could make it today. If anyone has any questions or anything we can do for you, don't hesitate to ask. And we look forward to you on future webinars. Thank you, everyone.